I was adjusting my best friend's veil when her father grabbed my wrist and whispered 8 words that shattered my entire existence. "You're not who you think you are." The words hit me like ice water. Vernon Caldwell, the man who'd driven us to soccer practice every Thursday for 10 years, who taught me how to ride a bike when my own father was too busy with work, was standing there with tears streaming down his face. His grip on my wrist wasn't painful, but it was desperate, like he was drowning, and I was the only thing keeping him afloat. "Vernon, what are you talking about?" My voice came out sharper than intended. The wedding was starting in 20 minutes. 200 guests were already seated in the garden. The string quartet was warming up. This was not the time for whatever midlife crisis he was having. His hands trembled as he pulled out a faded photograph from his suit pocket. The edges were worn soft, like it had been handled 1,000 times. He held it out to me, and my world stopped. It showed a toddler, maybe 3 years old, wearing a yellow dress covered in tiny sunflowers. The same dress I'd worn in every single childhood photo hanging in my parents' house. The dress my mother always said her mother had sewn by hand, passing it down through generations. That little girl in the photo had my exact same crooked smile, the one my dad always called my troublemaker grin. But the woman holding that child? She had auburn hair that caught the sunlight like spun copper, green eyes that sparkled with a joy so pure it made my chest ache, high cheekbones and a pointed chin that looked exactly like the face I saw in the mirror every morning. My mother has black hair, dark brown eyes, a round, soft face, nothing like mine. "Her name was Cordelia," Vernon said, his voice breaking on each syllable. "She died 25 years ago, 3 months after this photo was taken." The bridal suite suddenly felt too small. The air was too thick. My bridesmaid dress, pale lavender and perfectly pressed, felt like it was suffocating me. Through the window, I could see my parents, Robert and Diane, already seated in the garden. Mom was laughing at something the woman next to her had said. Dad was checking his phone, probably monitoring his restaurant's Saturday lunch rush. They looked so normal, so perfectly, ordinarily normal. "That woman in the photo," Vernon continued, each word seemingly pulled from somewhere deep and painful inside him, "was my brother Nathan's fiancée. Nathan died in Afghanistan before you were born. Cordelia was your real mother, Marlo, and the people you call Mom and Dad, they're not who you think they are either." The boutonniere I'd been holding for him fell to the floor, white rose petals scattering across the hardwood. In the distance, I could hear Teslin laughing with her other bridesmaids, completely unaware that her father was destroying everything I thought I knew about myself in a room just down the hall. "I've been a coward for 25 years, Vernon said, finally releasing my wrist. "Every birthday party, every Christmas dinner, every time you called them Mom and Dad in front of me, I wanted to tell you. But I was weak. We all were. We thought we were protecting you." "Protecting me from what?" He looked at me then, really looked at me, and I saw 25 years of guilt etched into every line on his face. "From the truth about how she died, from the truth about who you really are, from the truth about what we all agreed to do that night. She never came home. My name is Marlo, or at least that's what I've been told for 28 years. I'm a pediatric nurse at Children's Hospital, where I hold premature babies and tell their terrified parents everything will be okay. I live in a 2-bedroom apartment with a rescue cat named Winston, who only has 3 legs. I make lasagna every Sunday because it's my dad Robert's favorite. I call my mom Diane every morning on my drive to work. But standing in that room, holding a photograph of a dead woman who looked exactly like me, listening to Vernon Caldwell confess to a quarter-century of lies, I realized I had no idea who I really was. And in 20 minutes, I was supposed to stand beside his daughter and smile for photos that would capture this perfect day. Photos that would be framed and hung on walls. Photos that would become part of another family's careful construction of truth. The wedding march began to play in the garden below. The morning started perfectly. Teslin and I had been inseparable since her family moved next door when we were 3. Our mothers became friends at the neighborhood welcome party, and we grew up like sisters, sharing everything from chicken pox to heartbreaks to college acceptance letters. I remember the day we met with absolute clarity. She was wearing a pink tutu over jeans, and I thought she was the coolest person I'd ever seen. By lunch, we'd planned our entire lives together. We'd be teachers, we decided, and live in houses next door to each other, and marry brothers so our kids would be double cousins. The brother thing didn't work out, but everything else about our friendship exceeded those childhood dreams. "Marlo, honey, help me with this necklace," Teslin called from the bridal suite. Her wedding was happening at the Caldwell Estate, 50 acres of Tennessee countryside, where we'd spent countless summers catching fireflies and building fort cities that sprawled across the back meadow. I walked over, taking the delicate pearl strand from her hands. Nervous? About marrying Jordan? Number about my dad's speech? Terrified. She laughed, the sound bouncing off the vintage mirror. "He's been acting so weird all week, keeps saying this wedding will change everything. Yesterday, he actually teared up while we were going over the seating chart." "Vernon's just not ready to let his little girl go," I said, fastening the clasp. The pearls had belonged to her grandmother, a woman I'd called Nana Joe, right alongside Teslin. Through the window, I could see the garden transformation. White chairs in perfect rows, an archway dripping with wisteria, and mason jars filled with baby's breath lining the aisle. My parents were already seated in the third row. Mom had worn her navy dress, the one she saved for special occasions. She'd had it since my high school graduation, and somehow it still fit perfectly. Dad was beside her, probably checking his phone to monitor his restaurant's Saturday lunch rush. They'd been married 32 years, high school sweethearts who still held hands at the grocery store. "Remember when we were 7 and planned my wedding?" Teslin asked, smoothing her dress. "You said I had to marry someone who could beat you at Mario Kart so you'd know he was worthy." "Jordan still hasn't beaten me," I pointed out. "Nobody beats you at Mario Kart. It's genuinely concerning how good you are." We both laughed, and for a moment we were 7 again, making dandelion crowns and promising we'd be best friends forever. Vernon had been there that day too, bringing us lemonade in plastic cups shaped like dinosaurs, watching us with that strange, sad smile he always seemed to have around me. I'd never thought much about it. Vernon was just quiet, contemplative, an accountant who preferred numbers to words. "You're something borrowed, Josephine." Vernon's wife entered carrying a small velvet box. She'd been like a second mother to me, teaching me to knit, to make her famous peach cobbler, to French braid my own hair. These were my mother's. Wore them at my own wedding. The earrings were Art Deco, delicate diamond drops that caught the light. As Teslin put them on, Josephine caught my eye in the mirror. There was something in her expression I couldn't read, a weight to her gaze that felt significant. "You look beautiful, sweetheart," she told Teslin, but she was still looking at me. "Both of you do, like sisters." "We basically are," Teslin said, squeezing my hand. "Marlo's been family since day one." Josephine's smile wavered slightly. "Yes, family." The photographer knocked, wanting to get shots of Teslin with her bridesmaids. We clustered around her, 5 women who'd known each other since elementary school. Brecken, who'd taught us all how to properly apply eyeliner. Ainsley, who'd driven the getaway car for Teslin's first attempt at sneaking out. Waverly, who'd held her hair back through food poisoning on spring break. And me, who'd been there for everything, who knew that Teslin was afraid of butterflies but would never admit it. Who'd practiced her wedding vows with her so many times I could recite them myself. 5 minutes, the wedding coordinator called through the door. That's when Vernon knocked. 3 short raps, hesitant but insistent. When Teslin opened the door, her father stood there in his gray suit, boutonniere already pinned, looking like he might shatter into pieces. "Marlo," he said, his voice cracking, "could I speak with you privately?" "It's important." And just like that, the perfect morning cracked, a hairline fracture that would soon split everything wide open. "Marlo, could I speak with you privately?" Vernon's voice cracked like thin ice under weight. "It's important." Teslin rolled her eyes, adjusting her veil in the mirror. "Dad, we're literally about to walk down the aisle in 20 minutes. Whatever father-daughter moment you're having can wait until the reception." "I know, sweetheart. This can't wait any longer." He looked at me with tears forming, actual tears that he didn't even try to hide. "I've been a coward for 25 years, but watching you stand here, about to be part of our family officially as Tess's maid of honor, I can't let another minute pass." The other bridesmaids exchanged confused glances. Josephine stepped forward, placing a hand on Vernon's shoulder. "Vernon, not now." "If not now, when?" He shrugged off her touch. "After the ceremony?" "Next Christmas, when Marlo has children of her own who deserve to know their real history?" "Dad, you're scaring me," Teslin said, her voice small. He led me to his study, his hand on my elbow, gentle but insistent. The room smelled like leather and old books, exactly as it had when he'd helped me with calculus homework senior year. The walls were covered with photographs, Teslin's graduation, their family vacation to Yellowstone, and surprisingly, several pictures of me at various ages. Always with Teslin, always smiling. Vernon's hands shook as he opened an old filing cabinet, the metal drawer squealing in protest. "Your mother, Diane, she's my sister-in-law, was. It's complicated." "What are you talking about?" My chest tightened. The boutonniere I'd been carrying for him fell from my hand. He pulled out a manila envelope yellowed with age, held closed with a string tie that looked like it hadn't been opened in years. "My wife's younger sister was named Cordelia. She died in a car accident when you were 3, but before she died, she left you with us for what was supposed to be just a weekend." "That's impossible. My parents are Robert and Diane. I have baby pictures, birth certificates, a social security card, all fabricated after the fact." He showed me the photograph. The woman holding the toddler was stunning. Auburn waves that fell past her shoulders, bright green eyes that held a spark of mischief, the same pointed chin I saw in my mirror every morning. The resemblance was undeniable, like looking at myself through a time-filtered lens. Cordelia was your mother, your real mother, and your father wasn't Robert. My legs felt weak. I sank into his desk chair, the leather creaking under my weight. Then who? Vernon pulled out another document, this one a military death certificate. "Your biological father was my brother, Nathan. He died in Afghanistan 2 months before you were born. IED explosion outside Kandahar. He never even knew Cordelia was pregnant." The room spun. Everything I knew, every story about my birth, my first words, my parents' joy when I arrived, all of it was what? Fiction? So Diane is my aunt? By marriage, yes. Cordelia was Josephine's youngest sister. When Nathan died, Cordelia fell apart. She was 22, pregnant, completely alone. Her parents had disowned her for getting pregnant out of wedlock. Very religious, very strict. Josephine and I took her in, but she struggled. After you were born, the depression got worse. He pulled out more photos. Cordelia holding me as an infant, her smile not quite reaching those green eyes. Cordelia pushing me on a swing, her face thin, exhausted. Cordelia at what must have been my 3rd birthday party, surrounded by people I didn't recognize. That last weekend, she asked Diane to watch you, said she needed to handle some of Nathan's military benefits paperwork in Nashville. Diane had been trying to have children for 8 years. She and Robert had just gotten news that IVF wasn't an option for them. Having you for the weekend was supposed to be practice, a way to ease the pain of their own loss. But Cordelia never came back. Vernon nodded, pulling out a newspaper clipping. The accident happened on Highway 40 just outside of Lebanon. Rainy night, they said, lost control of the car. I stared at the headline. Local woman dies in single car accident. The photo was grainy, but it was clearly Cordelia. When the police came to notify us, Diane was holding you. You'd been crying for your mother all weekend, but suddenly you were calm in her arms. She looked at me and said, she can't go into the system. She needs to stay with family. Robert had connections at the courthouse. Documents were altered, birth certificates reissued. In 3 months, it was like Cordelia had never existed, and you'd always been theirs. And everyone just agreed to this massive lie? We thought we were protecting you. From the trauma, from the system, from growing up knowing your mother died and your father never knew you existed. I stood there, wedding music beginning to play in the distance, the string quartet's melody floating through the open window like a mockery of normalcy. Does Teslin know? No one knows except the adults who were there. Your parents, me, and my wife Josephine. We made a pact that night. We swore we'd take it to our graves. So why tell me now? Vernon's face crumpled like paper. Because I watch you with your parents, and I see Cordelia's spirit trapped in their narrative. Because you're 28, the age she should have been now. Because you deserve to know whose eyes you inherited, whose laugh you carry, whose blood runs through your veins. I need to talk to Diane, now. Marlo, please, the ceremony starts in 10 minutes. The ceremony can wait. I stormed out, holding the photograph, my lavender bridesmaid dress swishing against my legs as I ran down the hallway. The other bridesmaids called after me, but their voices were just noise against the roaring in my ears. I burst through the front doors of the estate, nearly colliding with Jordan's cousin, who was serving as an usher. The garden spread before me, 200 guests in their finest clothes, all turned expectantly toward the house, waiting for the processional to begin. The photographer was positioning himself at the altar. The minister was reviewing his notes. I found my parents seated in the third row. Diane's face went white when she saw what I was holding. She recognized that photograph immediately, her hand flying to her chest as if I'd physically struck her. Mom? The word felt foreign now, like speaking a language I'd only pretended to know. Is this true? Robert stood up, reaching for me, his restaurant owner's confidence evaporating. Sweetheart, let's discuss this later after the ceremony. Is this true? The guests around us were starting to stare. Whispers rippled through the rows like wind through wheat. The string quartet faltered, the violinist looking to the coordinator for guidance. Diane's composure shattered. She stood slowly, her navy dress suddenly making her look older, smaller. We were going to tell you, when you turned 18, then 21. Then we thought, what's the point? You're our daughter in every way that matters. Except genetically? Except legally? Except honestly? Keep your voice down, Robert hissed, aware of the phones already coming out, the social media disaster brewing. You want me to be quiet? After 25 years of lies, you want me to be quiet? I held up the photograph for everyone to see. This is my real mother, Cordelia. She died when I was 3, and these people just decided to keep me like I was a lost puppy they found. The wedding guests were in full stare mode now. Teslin appeared at the garden entrance, her white dress gleaming in the afternoon sun, her face a mask of confusion and growing alarm. Jordan was beside her, his hand on her back, trying to understand why his wedding had turned into a soap opera. Cordelia couldn't even take care of herself, Diane said desperately, tears streaming down her face, mascara leaving dark trails on her cheeks. She was 22, unmarried, living in a studio apartment that barely had heat. She could barely afford diapers. We gave you everything. Private schools, dance lessons, college tuition, that car for your 16th birthday. You gave me lies. Every birthday wish, every Mother's Day card, every time you told me the story of my birth, how Dad fainted in the delivery room, how you craved strawberry ice cream the whole pregnancy. All of it was fiction. It wasn't fiction, Diane pleaded. The love was real, is real. We raised you. We were there for every nightmare, every scraped knee, every broken heart. We taught you to tie your shoes and drive a car and believe in yourself. You taught me to live in a fairy tale, you wrote. Vernon had followed me out along with Josephine. They stood at the edge of the gathering crowd, Josephine's face carved from stone, Vernon looking like he might vomit into the rose bushes. We did what we thought was best, Robert said, trying to take control. Cordelia was gone. Nothing could bring her back, but we could give you a stable, loving home. We could give you parents who desperately wanted you. What about what I deserved? The truth about who I am, where I come from, my father who died serving this country? Teslin pushed through the crowd, her veil catching on someone's chair, ripping slightly. She didn't notice or didn't care. Marlo, what's happening? Dad, what did you do? The entire garden held its breath, 200 guests waiting to see if this wedding would happen or if they'd just witnessed its destruction. Josephine suddenly stood up from the front row, her voice cutting through the chaos like a blade. Enough! Diane, tell her all of it, or I will. The garden fell silent except for the string quartet, awkwardly stopping mid-song, the cellist's bow freezing in midair. 200 pairs of eyes fixed on our small group, this family drama unfolding where unity candles should have been lit. Josephine walked over, her silver hair catching the afternoon light, and took my hands. Her fingers were cold, trembling slightly. Your mother didn't die in an accident, sweetheart. She took her own life." The world tilted. Diane gasped, "Josephine, no!" "She deserves the truth." Josephine turned back to me, her eyes fierce with long suppressed honesty. "Cordelia struggled after Nathan died. Depression, they called it, though back then we just said she was having a hard time. That weekend she left you with Diane wasn't for military business. She was checking herself into a psychiatric facility, but she never made it. She stopped on the Riverside Bridge." I couldn't breathe. The photograph in my hand shook so violently I could barely see Cordelia's face. Teslin was beside me now, holding me up, her wedding dress pressed against my bridesmaid gown, both of us trembling. "The police found her car parked perfectly on the shoulder," Josephine continued, her voice steady but tears flowing freely. "Her purse was on the passenger seat with a note. All it said was, 'Please make sure Marlo knows she was loved.' She jumped at 2:47 in the morning. A trucker saw her go over." "You're lying," I whispered. But even as I said it, pieces were clicking into place. The way my parents had always been hypervigilant about my moods. The therapist they'd insisted I see through high school just to have someone to talk to. The way they'd panicked when I'd gone through a rough patch in college, immediately flying out to stay with me for a week. "We all agreed to the accident story," Josephine said, looking at each person in turn. "To protect you. To protect Cordelia's memory. But Vernon's right. Your family, truly family, and secrets like this poison everything they touch." Diane was sobbing now, collapsed back onto her chair, Robert's arms around her. I loved her. She was my best friend before she was my sister-in-law. When she called that night, asking me to watch you, she sounded so hopeful. Said she was finally getting help, that she'd be back Monday morning to pick you up. She kissed you goodbye 17 times. I counted. "Then why?" My voice broke completely. "Why did she do it?" Vernon stepped forward, pulling out another piece of paper from his jacket. "The note she left at the bridge wasn't the only one. She wrote you a letter. We've been debating for 25 years whether to give it to you." The envelope was sealed, my name written across it in handwriting that looked eerily like my own. I tore it open with shaking fingers, the garden still silent around us, even the birds seeming to hold their breath. "My darling Marlo," I read aloud, my voice barely a whisper that somehow carried across the entire garden. "By the time you read this, if you ever do, you'll be old enough to understand that sometimes love isn't enough to keep someone here. Your father is gone, and I'm so broken, I'm afraid I'll break you too. You laugh like him. You have his stubborn chin and his perfect ears. Every time I look at you, I see him, and it's both the most beautiful and most painful thing in the world." I had to stop, my throat closing. Teslin took the letter, continuing in her clear voice. "I'm going to get help. That's what I told Diane, and I meant it. But as I'm sitting in this car, I realize I've been drowning for months, and I'm so tired of fighting to breathe. You deserve better than a mother who cries more than she smiles, who can barely get out of bed some days, who looks at you and feels both infinite love and infinite sorrow." Jordan had moved closer, ready to catch his bride if she fell. The minister had sat down on the altar steps. Someone's child was crying in the back row, quickly hushed. Teslin kept reading. "Diane will take care of you. She'll be the mother I can't be. She'll bake cookies and attend school plays and won't have to fake her smiles. Please don't hate me. Please don't hate yourself. You are the only perfect thing I ever did." "Her mental illness?" I asked quietly, looking at Diane. "Is that why you were so paranoid every time I had a bad day? Why you made me see Dr. Morrison through all of high school?" The silence was my answer. The wedding continued an hour later. Teslin insisted, saying we were still family. "More than ever now," she'd whispered while wiping mascara from under my eyes in the bathroom. Vernon walked her down the aisle with red-rimmed eyes, and I stood beside her, clutching my bouquet like an anchor. When the minister asked if anyone objected, a nervous laugh rippled through the crowd, but Jordan just took Teslin's hands and said, "We've already had enough drama for one wedding. Let's just get married." 3 months have passed since that day. The video someone took of my confrontation with Diane went viral for about a week. Wedding drama reveals 25-year family secret. before the internet moved on to the next scandal. Teslin and Jordan are in Bali now, sending photos from their delayed honeymoon, making jokes about how their wedding will never be forgotten. I've seen more photos of Cordelia now, dozens that Josephine had hidden away in a storage unit she'd kept secret even from Vernon. My mother, my real mother, was an artist. She painted watercolors of wildflowers, sketched portraits of strangers in coffee shops, filled journal after journal with poetry I'm still too raw to read. In every photo from before Nathan died, she's radiant. After, it's like watching light slowly leave a room. I found her grave last week. It's in a cemetery 2 towns over, marked with her real name, Cordelia Marie Caldwell. Not the Smith, they'd told everyone. The groundskeeper said no one had visited in years. I brought yellow sunflowers like the dress we'd both worn and sat there for 3 hours, telling her about my life, about the woman I'd become, about how I understand now why she couldn't stay. Diane and I are working through it with a therapist who specializes in adoption trauma, though my case doesn't quite fit any traditional category. You were loved so much, you were claimed, the therapist said. That's both a blessing and a theft. Diane still calls every morning, but now she starts with, "This is Aunt Diane," in a voice that breaks my heart. I've told her she's still Mom. She'll always be Mom, but we're both relearning what that means. Robert admitted he'd wanted to tell me the truth years ago but couldn't bear to hurt Diane. "She saved you, but you saved her too," he said last week over coffee. "When Cordelia died, Diane almost followed her into that darkness. Having you to focus on, to love, to raise, it gave her purpose when she needed it most." Vernon gave me a letter yesterday that changed everything once more. One Cordelia had written for Nathan before he deployed, never knowing she was pregnant. She described their plans, a small wedding in the mountains, maybe 3 kids, a house with a garden where she could paint. At the bottom, she'd written, "If something happens to you, I won't survive it." She was right. I've started visiting Nathan's grave, too. He's in Arlington, Section 60, surrounded by other young soldiers who never came home. The first time I went, I didn't know what to say to the father I never met. Now I tell him about my job at the hospital, about the babies I hold whose fathers are deployed, about how I see his eyes in the mirror every morning. Here's what I've learned. Sometimes families are built on foundations of loss and lies, but also love, messy, complicated, imperfect love. The truth didn't destroy us. It rearranged us into something more honest, more whole. Diane and Robert weren't villains. They were people who chose love over law, who built a family from tragedy. Vernon and Josephine weren't cowards. They were survivors trying to protect everyone from a pain too large to name. And that yellow sunflower dress? I kept it. It hangs in my closet between the bridesmaid dress and my scrubs, a reminder that I am both who I always was and someone entirely new. Marlo, daughter of Cordelia and Nathan, raised by Diane and Robert, cousin-sister to Teslin, carrier of stories both told and untold, proof that sometimes the most beautiful things grow from the most broken soil. The truth didn't set me free. It gave me roots I never knew I was missing. And maybe that's the real inheritance, not just DNA or death certificates or faded photographs, but the knowledge that love takes many forms, that families are made as much as they're born, and that sometimes the greatest act of love is taking a secret to the edge of forever before finally setting it free. If this story resonated with you, if you've ever discovered that your family holds secrets, or if you understand that love and truth aren't always the same thing, please like this video and share it with someone who needs to hear it. Comment below with your own experiences. I read every single one. And subscribe to this channel for more real, raw stories about the complicated ways we become who we are.